Hello, this is Michelle with the Glimmers of Intuition. Thank you for joining me today. I wanted to talk about the importance of nervous system regulation when you're changing your beliefs. And what I've, in my own experience, because anything on my channel, I discuss kind of my own experiences. So I never share with you guys anything that has not been either proven or true for myself. And when changing beliefs, I've learned that to go from where you are to where you're wanting to be, there's a variance. So, and your body kind of, if it doesn't believe something, it feels that, because of the way our minds are wired, that back in caveman times, our minds were wired to protect us. Like if, a predator was coming to us while we were sleeping in a cave or, and it doesn't really hold any, it holds value, let's say, to prevent, somebody attacking you or having any kind of violence in front of you. But, we're fortunate enough that we don't have to worry about that for the most part. And, to get, transparent, when I got out of domestic violence, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. And that's the PTSD that it isn't for, there's a different PTSD for like military personnel where they're in constant fight or flight because they're in constant danger, either in a combat zone or what have you. Whereas complex PTSD is more your situation. It can be domestic violence. It could be abuse. There's a lot of different scenarios, but for me, it was domestic violence. And when your mind is in this constant repetition of you're expecting something bad to happen, it allows your nervous system to become dysregulated. And one thing that I was fortunate enough to go through treatment for was called EMDR therapy. And it changed my life. It changed my life. It saved my life. It allowed me to, one, feel safe, and two, start to instill beliefs that to sustain, the life that I was wanting, not the life that was in front of me. Because for the longest time, I kind of thought that everybody had the same kind of, marriage and the same kind of experience in love, that love wasn't to be easy. Love wasn't to be a partnership. Love wasn't to be patient and kind, which since then I've experienced better. And I realized that that was just an outdated belief. But for me to sustain now, through trial and error, even going through that, I've had to learn to regulate my nervous system. And by doing that, there's natural ways like just going into nature, working out. For me, I do everything. I do breath work, nervous system regulation with, working out. And also too, I love where I live is gorgeous, and I love to go on walks and I love to see nature. That's just who I am. But for the longest time, when I was like, I wanted, and I don't want to discourage anybody that, just because you've been presented with divorce or you've been presented with bad experiences, that they can't turn around. Now, in regards to abuse, I don't suggest anybody stay in that, just because there's so many stories that are built up with that. But I'm talking about how you can be the solution in the sense of, especially for those people who had a lot of bad things happen, but then they're getting into the more healthier dynamic. You can do it. And it's not just some kind of like, fake positivity woo-woo. It's when you realize the belief, and I'll go into that in another video, but when you realize what the belief it's not so much where you've been, it's where you're going. And one thing that was really instrumental is, how would the Michelle think in a consistent, healthy relationship? How would she feel? And a lot of times we think that this is kind of a silly practice, but it's not, in the sense of, it's allowing, and it's not even just romantic. I'm talking about like friendships and family relationships, all the relationships, because from what I've learned, that, my limiting beliefs and what got me in places I didn't really necessarily want to be in, is that I felt that that was kind of like the end. And the reason why, what I felt like, and that nothing could change, was because my nervous system was dysregulated. And how you can go about this is very simple. And some of us, it may take, overnight. Some of us, it may take months, and to just realize that it's kind of like, for me, like, I've started a fitness journey too. So I'm like, at first I was like, oh, I'll get in the gym, I'm going to knock this out and I'm going to be this hot babe, which, I consider myself hot babe now, just saying. But what I meant, like, the vanity side. And then I've realized is that that's not what I want. I want to consistently be good to myself. I want to consistently, show up. And that was the story I had running, that it was kind of like a get in, hit it, quit it, and get out. And it was like, no, I get to enjoy the process. I get to enjoy, building, the muscle training and the mindset and making my bones stronger and all these things. And I think a lot of times too, we go in and we think we got to change all these beliefs, and we don't. All we have to do is regulate our nervous system to the point where we see that it's a normal and consistent thing. It's normal and consistent for people to have a mutual, respected, beneficial marriage and not be arguing. Not that your partner may not get on your nerves. I'm not talking about that. You're allowed, and that's the other thing, like, it doesn't have to be fake positivity. You're allowed to have disagreements. But it's the type of disagreements that, is it in a respectful way or is it in disrespect? And you're the solution in all that. And when you realize that you are the solution to your life, it's very empowering. And everybody's path is different. Not everybody needs EMDR. I did. I'm grateful I had it. And a lot of times when we're trying to create new, people are afraid to talk about their old story. But no, I'm going to get vulnerable on here because I know it's going to help somebody. And also too, I know that that's not my life anymore. I know the next marriage I get into, it is not going to end up like my first one. I know that. I know that. I just know that because I've decided that, and I decide what happens in my life. And it doesn't, and some people may not believe that, and that's fine. That's your life. But for me, I believe that I know what I'm capable of. And the other side too is, if I decide to go down that path, I want to enjoy all of it. I want to enjoy, and that's kind of how I am in all my life. I follow my joy, and I romanticize my life because my life is pretty freaking amazing to me. And you should do the same for your own life. Like, and it's not even like the flashy things. I'm talking about when you wake up in the morning, your kids are healthy, you're able to eat something in your home, you're able to spend time with your pets, you're able to decide what career you want, and like, I just graduated college and I'm 50 this year, and that was a big deal for me. Like, I never thought I could do that. And it's just, life is so amazing that, it's really, and I don't want to sound cliche here, but it is, life is what you make of it. So I just wanted to share that wherever you're at on your journey, just accept yourself and know that if you're wanting better, you can. You just need to normalize it and to regulate your nervous system however you deem necessary to allow it to feel consistent and normal. But it's just, for the longest time I thought that what was presented in my life was the end game. I was like, oh shoot. And I was like, no. And as I've grown, and even though I've gone through all that with my ex-husband, I wish him well. I don't see him at any negative light. I see him as who he is, and I see the wounded parts of him, but I don't hold any like, oh, I hate him, or I don't hold anything back anymore that I used to, in the sense that I've allowed myself to heal, and I've allowed myself to have emotional freedom, and I've allowed myself to kind of move on from that situation. So, and I hope that, I wish that for everybody, that if they've gone through something that wasn't ideal, and that, you can find what you're looking for. You just have to realize that it's already inside of you, and you just got to regulate that nervous system. So anyways, till next time, thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.